Hi everyone, welcome back.
India is on its way to becoming the next economic superpower of the world. Earlier this week, India actually regained its position as the fastest growing major economy of the world.
In fact, data released on Wednesday suggests that the Indian economy grew at an annual rate of 7.2% in the final quarter of last year, continuing its bounce back from a sharp slowdown in the middle of 2017.
Wait, why don't we hold down that thought? And let's invite our business panelists to take this idea forward by discussing the realm of big data steering automation, deliberating changing consumer trends, and providing insights on a series of reforms aimed at building India as a global manufacturing hub. May I now invite our esteemed panelists, Mr. Neeraj Kanwar, Mr. Anil Rai Gupta, Mr. Ajay Bijli, and our moderator, Professor Alnoor Bhimani, to kindly take their seats on the stage.
Mr. Neeraj Kanwar is the Managing Director and Vice Chairman of Apollo Tyres, India's second largest tire manufacturer. Under his able leadership, the company has grown exponentially, taking its net worth from 450 million US dollars to about $2 billion US dollars within a time span of just 5 years. He has been associated with several leading organizations, including being named the chairman of the Automotive Tire Manufacturers Association India. Sir, we are pleased to have you amongst us.
Our next speaker, Mr. Anil Rai Gupta, is the Chairman and Managing Director of Havells India. He has been instrumental in transforming Havells into a globally recognized industry leader, ranked amongst the top 5 lighting brands of the world. He achieved this feat by focusing on diversification of products and unmatched marketing strategies. Mr. Gupta has been awarded as the Emerging Business Leader by All India Management Association in the year 2017. Sir, we welcome you.
Mr. Ajay Bijli is the founder, chairman, and managing director of the PVR Group, India's largest chain of multiplexes. Under his leadership, PVR serves around 75 million patrons annually and operates a cinema circuit of 612 screens at 132 properties in 51 cities. He has been named Asia Innovator of the Year at India Business Leader Awards 2016 for the exponential growth of PVR cinemas over the years. Sir, we welcome you.
Thank you.
Our moderator of this panel is Professor Alnoor Bhimani, who is the founding director of LSE Entrepreneurship at the London School of Economics and Political Science. Professor Bhimani's academic work covers financial control in the digital economy, management accounting and strategic finance, entrepreneurship and global development, among many other fields. Sir, we may now request you to proceed with the panel discussion.
Thank you. Okay, so it's a great pleasure to have the 3 guests. I was reflecting this morning on how we have a beast from the east, but then we have 3 major tycoons from India here. So I'd like to cover a variety of issues with you about your own industries and then generally the context for business in India. And I wanted to kick off with a sort of big question, which is that very recently we heard the news about India leading economic growth across the world, around sort of over 7%, superseding China's. But then we hear a lot about this fast-track changes taking place in India. So Modi's, I think, initiated a number of changes. And all of you were affected, in a sense with, what happened last year, in fact, and then more recently with GST. And I wanted you to comment on some of the changes taking place in India in terms of your own specific businesses and the impact that it's having. And we could start with you.
Thank you. Well, you're talking about the recent changes in the last year if, on business. 2 major events which happened last year were demonetization and then GST. They were major disruptions in business. And I would say, these are positive disruptions to have in the sense that, they might have short-term implications, which they had. But also, we were very clear from the very beginning that these short-term implications would have positive long-term benefits. And demonetization was definitely a surprise element. GST was expected for many years and had to come, but demonetization was a surprise thing which came about. I think the final results didn't come out as expected. At least I was very positive about the business because that would have led our kind of business. So I come from electrical and lighting background business. So we were expecting a lot of change after the demonetization, that the organized industry, the the so-called quality-based industries would benefit because, a lot of businesses were thriving on, non-tax kind of compliance issues and all. Had some effect for some time, but then over a period of time that got diluted. But thankfully GST came within 6 months of that. And GST, again, short-term disruptions. However, it's becoming, bringing a lot of compliance in the tax system. So I think overall we believe that the industry might see a lot of positive changes coming in the next few years. With these small businesses coming into the tax net, the compliance net, overall, tax collections of the government will improve. And it'll be a level playing field for the industry, which is a big thing for, let's say small scale industries as well as large scale industries. The only issue is, the way it was brought out, it had issues for small businesses because, let's say the compliance and the technology which was required to get into GST was a bit difficult. However, the government has been responsive. So, people talk about a lot of changes after GST. Every 15 days there were modifications. But actually it was for the good because, at least you have the government who was responsive to make those changes. So which was a positive thing. And I think now it's settling down. So the demand has come back. For a year or so, the demand was slow, but it's coming back now. So I think, whatever we were expecting in terms of long-term positive implications, that's going to, show positive growth from now. You talked about India being the fastest growing economy. I think we still have a long way to go.
Right.
7%, the adjusted so-called 7% is still 5.5% of the old statistics. I think India needs to go above 10 for the next many years. And there is a possibility to do that with all this compliance. I think the kind of population that India has, the kind of, possibility to grow the GDP, I'm sure, if everything falls into place, we should be looking at double-digit growth for many years now.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And Neeraj, would you like to comment?
I think Anil has said it all, but just 2 bits from my side. Is that when the Indian government came up with demonetization, obviously it was a big shock, surprise. GST was another big surprise for all of us. We knew it was coming, but I think what India has lacked in is the implementation of such huge policies, which does affect the entire supply chain.
Right.
Organized sectors, all of us, we are prepared for GST. But India also thrives on a huge economy which is unorganized. And for them to come up to a level of becoming automated, looking at GST, demonetization, so you're really affecting the livelihoods of those guys. Okay, we guys didn't get that much affected because you have big organizations, you have good consultants who come and help you out. But I think that is the weakness in the system. Okay, and we could have planned it much better and got more advantage from these reforms. But I think overall these are good long-term reforms. So if I take it for ourselves in our tire industry, and just to cite examples of what happened, the Chinese tires were coming into our market, and at one point it had become 30% of the market in commercial vehicles was Chinese tires. And they were coming at nearly 50% of our cost. So we were losing huge market share. When demonetization came in, because it was all dealt in cash, it really affected the Chinese producers. When GST came in, also it affected the Chinese producers. So from a 30% market share, they're down to 10%. So it has given growth to the Indian tire industry, not only for us, but for across industries it's given. And these are very positive reforms. Like Anil said, they have a long-term impact. But when you sit outside, you don't know what's going on in India. Obviously, as an investor, you will doubt what's going on because there's a lot of hue and cry on these two issues. But long term, yes, it has increased the efficiency of supply chain, which is very important for all of us. logistics has become much better. So I'm pretty positive about these reforms.
Right. Okay, good, yeah. And Ajay, your industry is entirely different. I think somebody mentioned earlier that perhaps you should have spoken at the entertainment. But I know you have a lot to say about a variety of things,
Yeah.
perhaps including GST and demonetization.
Yeah, of course. I mean, these two, events definitely impacted every business.
Right.
And when demonetization happened, still most of the tickets which are sold and popcorn which is sold is all in cash. So of course, in the pecking order, watching a movie and buying popcorn was the last thing on people's minds. So completely impacted us, derailed us. But the positive was that our online ticketing and our online purchases of even concessions, that went up dramatically.
Right.
So initially, of course, the priority was something else. So people wanted to spend their money on the essentials. So we did feel the heat for about a month. But then once the movie flow started, I remember Dangal came, which is a Amir Khan movie, and that changed a lot. And but the penetration of our online has gone as high as 70% now.
Right.
And even the people are buying on apps, everything, even the food items, everything. So I think overall it's all settled down now. GST definitely is a good thing, of course. 29 states, 7 union territories to come out with one tax. It was a hell of a attempt that the government was, wanting to do, and they did it. But from us personally, in our industry, it's very, very high. It's come to 28%, which is what they call sin tax. So I think we need to have less item songs in our movies now, because it's still perceived as. So in both areas, I'm quite surprised that they've given us 28%, because luxury or sin, these are the two where 28% tax has been, GST has been imposed. And it can't be luxury, because 2.1 billion tickets get sold at a ticket price of $1 in India. So how can it be, first of all, luxury? And on the other hand, it's not sin, it's pure entertainment. We have the maximum number of universal movies or UA movies. There's nothing there which is objectionable. So I think that's the only thing that's bothered us, that tax is good. A lot of things have got simplified, but this part is something that probably the government could have taken a different view of the tax rate which has been imposed on.
Right.
So refrigerators and washing machines are also in 28. So
Are
we'll have to wait for people to assume that they are not sin products.
I'd just like to understand, how do you buy a popcorn on an app?
You can just order, and then they collect it at the at the concession counter.
Okay,
And the other thing, just to mention a little bit, is that real estate, one leg of our business is in real estate. Because if malls don't get built, shopping centers we don't grow. So that's been a bit of a positive momentum for us, because all of a sudden, a lot of private equity funds, everyone is investing, a lot of money, retail is coming in, a lot of big stores are. So that's been very good for us. There was hardly any momentum in growing screens. I was barely opening 30, 40 screens a year. Now we're opening about 120 to 150 odd screens a year. So that's been a big boost for us.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So you've caught a wave. I wanted to actually stay with you for a while, and you mentioned online sort of ticket sales, and I wanted to ask you more broadly what the implications of new technologies have been for you. I know you're expanding into IMAX, and maybe that's not a new technology, but that seems to be a growth area for you. But also in the UK, one could easily, in a sense, watch a movie that is playing at Curzon online at home. And I'm wondering what inroads you're making into sort of basically on-demand online movies at home, rather than people going to the multiplexes.
See, people are consuming content whenever they want to. So all platforms are available to watch movies. But like last year, the US did $11 billion of box office. Out of which $6 billion went to the studios. So still about 50 to 60% of the revenues come from theatrical box office. So all these online attempts which are being made for small independent films. Studios can't ignore theatrical business. So still there's a trade terminology called windowing. So still you get about 8 weeks of clear run theatrically,
Yes.
where the movie can be monetized. And once it does well, there's certain cachet attached to releasing a movie on the big screen.
Right.
After that, then the Amazons of the world and Netflix of the world, they pick up the thing. So still, it's very relevant. And I like the geography of India because 1,600 films come to the system. And as I said, 2.1 billion tickets get sold. What's happening in the West is much more evolved, but in India still people find the number one form of out-of-home entertainment. Of course, cricket and movies have always been competing, but out-of-home entertainment purely still is movies. So we are okay for now.
Right. Good. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Touch wood.
Okay. Yeah, so if I turn to Neeraj then, you've invested in a big plant now in Hungary, and then of course you've got your plants in India, and from my understanding, there's quite major discrepancies in terms of the extent of automation that you're using. So can you talk a little bit about that and why it might be sort of more appropriate to have that in Hungary as opposed to maybe India, perhaps to do with labor rates or perhaps to do with the skills of your labor?
No, I think I don't think there's any difference why I've done automation in Hungary vis-a-vis India. India, just because historical plants since 1975 did not have much automation. We set up a plant in Chennai in 2009 where we have put in automation. But when I don't look at automation from a perspective of labor costs. I look at it from a perspective of quality. Because automation, robotics does bring in much better tolerances and therefore much better tires, much better quality of tires. And that's what is required in today's weather conditions that you can see outside. So there is, while people do look at labor costs and look at automation, I think my philosophy is very different. It does improve the efficiency of the entire supply chain in a manufacturing outfit. It also gives you a lot of data. And data today has become very, very important for all of us to know. Because more and more, if you get data, you can plan your factories much better. You can look at efficiency parameters much better. Old days are gone where, Indians were coming out with low-quality products. Today, I can tell you one thing, that 5 years ago when we started importing tires into India, so Indian products were really looked at from a Chinese perspective, that we were down on quality. But today, brand India has become much more quality conscious. Automation also brings in productivity. Let's not forget that. And productivity today is very, very important. So what we are trying to do now in India is bring in automation, and really, it's not a matter of taking out headcount, but what happens is if the efficiency improves in your plants, you're able to reinvest into technology. You're able to grow the plants much better and get much more productivity per man hour out of that same labor. So the issue becomes in India is that then you don't look at blue collar. You have to look at people coming out of IIT universities, to look at graduates who can actually work on these robotic machines. And our plant in Chennai today, we do not have a union. We do not have blue collar. We only hire graduates who are able to operate on these machines. And I think that's the labor productivity that you get in with automation.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. And Anil, I know you're a big advocate of using technology and digital technologies especially, and you've made some inroads into IoT, I think, in quite a big way. Your setup is very different in a sense that you've got the dealers and you've got to appeal to them, but then they may represent other products as well. And I wonder how far are you using technologies to basically have a bigger slice of that market vis-a-vis your competition?
Right. So, just adding to what Neeraj also said, that, technology can be used both on the manufacturing side as well as in the front end, the dealers that you're talking about. India is actually benefited by the fact that, when there is a leapfrogging of technology or the change of technology which happens, India gets benefited because, it's over the last 30 or 40 years that many other Western countries have used technology. And it's just like in mobile telephony, when the GSM came, India leapfrogged and adopted that technology. So today, when we talk about manufacturing technology, we are utilizing the latest in terms of artificial intelligence or big data analytics in manufacturing as well. And that helps increase the productivity of the plants. That also, while we are talking about job creation in India, you'll be surprised to see that it's very difficult to get workers for factories these days, manual labor. People say that there's not enough jobs in India. But if you set up a plant, let's say in Northeast or Guwahati or somewhere, and you need 2,000 people, it's not so easy. And so that's why you need a lot of technology, a lot of automation in your own plants, because people are also, with education, people are also upgrading their skills, and they don't want to work, the same old manual labor that they used to do. So operating machines and, using computers is something what they would like to do, the younger generation these days. On the front-end side, I think technology can be used in many ways, to increase your market share. India, the younger generation especially, is completely focused on using mobiles these days as compared to what, earlier generation was. They're using laptops and all. So while there are very small shops of electrical outlets, they are placing their orders, they are utilizing technology, making sure that the stocks are all computerized. So actually small shops, with the help of apps, they're using technology in a big way, and we are helping them provide that and help increase our market share. Because if they are, let's say, if their cycle of turning the product becomes much faster, obviously the demand generation has to be done, but if their revenue cycle becomes faster, they would like to go towards that brand. So using technology in business for the front end is becoming a necessity.
Right.
And that's only to the dealers. When you go, to the consumers, you can use far more technology than you used to use earlier today. With artificial intelligence, with big data analytics, social media, you can actually, people used to talk about, business schools used to talk about getting close to the consumer 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But today you can actually do that sitting on the computer. You can know the preferences, consumer insights on a real-time basis. And you can actually segregate your consumer base using big data. So I think the opportunity which today's businesses have, especially India, with all this focus on computerization and technology, I think we'll have a much better possibility to leapfrog with the technology than even the Western part of the world.
Sure, I can well believe that. Yeah, absolutely. So if I stay with you for a moment, you have a very, very broadly diversified product base from all sorts of products, fans and lights and so on. And what I'm interested in is you talk about market segmentation in a sense, but you also pitch your products to specific market segments, perhaps value-driven as opposed to customers who want a premium product. And I wonder whether you can talk a little bit about, how you keep sort of a foot in 2 or 3 places across a range of products in the markets that you service.
So as I said, today you can be much closer to the consumer, right? We have when we make a lighting product, for example, you have consumers who put lights in their houses. You have consumers who would put lights in their shops. You would have consumers like Wipros and Infosys who would put lights in their, offices. And you also have consumers like government who would need street lights, to manage. So you can use technology everywhere. Segmenting a small residential consumer, you can, provide them the best of the aesthetics for the products so that the houses are, a consumer like Infosys or Wipro are looking for efficiency in their offices. So you can actually, with the new lighting technology, you can consume electricity much, lesser, not just because of LED technology, but actually by sensing and by using IoT in the product. So today it is possible to put an IoT chip in every light, which we are doing now.
Right.
And so every light is connected to the other light. And so a person walking from this room to that room, the lights can come up and then go down. And so basically, you use much lesser electricity as compared to you. And this is what large offices like, Cognizant of the world, where they're putting maybe 10,000 people in a building, they would want that kind of technology. On the other hand, you would assume that, government would just go in for the lowest cost tender business. But government is also changing these days. They want street lights, for example. And I'm sticking to lighting because, I'm just trying to focus on the IoT bit. So today, we are providing lights for a 100-kilometer road, wherein, they would come up in lighting only when, the cars are moving.
Right.
And when there is no car on the road, the lighting would come down. So there's sensing, there's the Internet of Things, and it's all centrally controlled. A lot of smart cities are using that concept, and it's actually being used more in the villages than because there the movement of cars is much lesser, so consuming much less electricity. So you can actually segment your consumer based on the consumer insights using a lot of technology and a lot of data, both on understanding the needs of the consumer, but also putting technology in your products. And as I said, in the background, I was just joking with them that, ours is a very boring industry. Like lighting or fans looks like very boring. But if you put in the right technology behind each and everything, you can actually be competing against the best in the world.
Sure. Yeah, that's very insightful. Well, I don't know. I mean, when I read about your profiles, I thought, okay, you've got tires and you've got lights, but then you've got entertainment, which is where you're here.
So I have to compete with Ajay because he'll hog the limelight with the entertainment.
That's right, yeah. But that's good. Now, I was almost tempted to say, tires come in all shapes and sizes. Actually, they come in all shapes and probably not sizes. But I wanted to ask you kind of, an element of that question that one could buy very, very cheap tires, like, for instance, those that you don't make but your Chinese competition makes. Conversely, if you have a premium car, Mercedes, BMW, then you might want to. And I wonder how you at Apollo, in a sense, sort of target certain segments. So you might go to certain OEMs, which are kind of premium, and then you might go to different markets, and you've got to cater to a wide variety of demands. So I wanted to put the sort of same question to you. How do you sort of link yourself to a wide sort of diversity of potential different market segments?
So it's all about the brand, and the way we've positioned Apollo, and we bought a company in 2009 by the name of Vredestein in Europe, in the Netherlands. And Vredestein really operates in a very niche segment of the market, which is the high-end cars in Europe. It's a 100-year Dutch brand, and they operate only in the, or used to operate only in the winter tire segment. When you look at Chinese, with cheap comes also safety. Okay, and tires are a very critical component of a car or of a truck. It can save you, it can save lives, and we've seen once the highways were built in India, we saw a lot of accidents on the highways because of cheap tires. I think the way one operates is in the tire segment, there are the top guys, the Michelins and the Bridgestones of the world, who are at 100 level on pricing. And then comes the second tier of pricing, which is all of us, which are some of the Indians, some of the Koreans, and some of the Europeans also. And they operate in this 80 to 90. So really, if you're looking, and no one operates in that budget segment, which is the Chinese segment. None of the top guys would go down there. Because safety, as I said, is a very, very critical component. And to make a good tire, you are going to put the best raw materials in the product to give the safety to the end consumer. And the maths just don't add up. If you take the raw material cost and the cost of manufacturing, the maths just don't add up as far as Chinese products are concerned. So as far as we are concerned, we have a premium brand on the Vredestein, which is, application driven, which is winter tires, high speed, German autobahns where the German drivers are going at high speeds. So you have to segment yourself as far as application is concerned. So the application also goes down when you're just doing intercity traveling. And then the whole story is different on the truck side. Truck is to do with speed, with load, with ambient temperature conditions, which is, let's say in India, it's 45, 50 degrees, so your tires have to perform in those. And then those road conditions in India are also very different to anywhere in the world. Driving patterns are very different in India because the trucker really goes off the road and comes back on the road, and the effect it has on the tire.
I've experienced that.
I think everyone's experienced that. So, you just have to play with different attributes in the product and different consumer minds in different parts of the world.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. So turning to Ajay is there much variety or maybe discrepancy in terms of tastes within India and the sorts of films that people want to see in different parts of India, and how do you sort of cater to that? So South India may be different from say, Rajasthan and so on.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
take that
there's
into
lot
account?
of disparity.
Really?
Everywhere, there's no one size fits all solution. Everywhere is so price points as well. So like we have, so our job is to get people out of their homes to watch movies. So at one level we have PVR's director's cut where we are charging as high as $20, which is 1,200 rupees, 1,300 rupees to get people out. So it's all luxury. At the other end of the spectrum, we have also because GST at less than 100 rupees, 18%, we have something called PVR Utsav, which is also aspirational. And that's only tier 3, tier 4 cities we are targeting now. But everywhere it has to be an aspirational product because people still want to go out and consume 3 hours of entertainment because Indian films are long, there's an interval, everything in a celebration. So first of all, price-wise, you have to address that disparity and you have to segment your offering. So we've got, as I said, $20 solution, we've got a 90 rupees solution, then we've got 200, 300 everywhere. So wherever we are, we see what is the demographic profile and we react to that and we make our cinema, the capex of the cinema and the opex of the cinema and the rent that we pay has to be adjusted accordingly. Then comes programming. So South India's got Malayalam, Kannada, six languages, Tamil, and therefore you have to make your products much larger. So our screens every multiplex is 12 screens, 14 screens, 15 screens. The movie-going index is very high. They go twice a month, which is a lot. Right. Like the national average is about 5, 6. If you come to Punjab, Rajasthan, all that, only Hindi movies do well, or 1 or 2 Punjabi movies or local movies, or English, but English which are not dialogue oriented. It are all your Marvels and Fast and the Furious of the world. So therefore your cinemas have to be made smaller. Food, again, it changes. Right. So what we serve down south, Mumbai, for example, they can't get enough of samosas for some reason. I tried to sell them in North India, nothing happened. Needle didn't move. So everywhere the tastes are different, and I have to address that. Sure. If I don't address it, then business suffers.
Sure. And popcorn's across the board?
Popcorn and Pepsi is a universal something that people like. Sure. That's like a real movie food. So wherever you go all over the world, about 60-70% of your revenues, even higher, what we call in our own language hero items. Because those are the things that people really want. That's the movie food. But rest, you have to still sprinkle a lot of things in the menu because, as I said, movies are long. So people sometimes miss their meals. So you need to have something substantial as well.
Sure. Okay, well, that's very useful. Now, one of the things that I think we've all been sort of privy to in the past 4, 5, 6 months is the big culture change taking place in Hollywood. I think there's repercussions, of course, outside Hollywood with the Me Too movement. And I'm wondering whether in your sort of context, whether you foresee certain changes in terms of consumer taste, the types of movies that they might want to see, and perhaps sort of a genre that caters more to women who may have sort of certain levels of political correctness that maybe we didn't have, us four. Would you sort of comment on that?
I didn't get it. You're saying the changes?
The sort of cultural changes that are taking place in terms of what is acceptable to see when you go and see a film. Is that changing at all? Do you foresee any difference in the future as you go
we had
forward?
a big issue with this movie called Padmavat.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was like the mother of all issues. As I said, people have to be very careful now. Sure. The content makers, what they create, they have to make sure that it is not sensitive to any group or anything like that. Sure. So other than that, I think people are just wanting entertainment. Yeah. I think Indians, the way we love Indian food, they love Indian movies.
Right.
So I think nothing too serious when it comes to content which is made locally. Of course, you have an audience. You decide who are you making this movie for, and then you work backwards on your budget and the number of prints you want to release, but variety. Sure. As I said, 1,600 films went through the system last year,
Right.
which was quite phenomenal, as opposed to 400 in America and about 350 in China. So US, China, and India are the three markets. US is in fact changing its entire portfolio of movies. I mean, they're only making movies for the world now.
Right.
So there is hardly any content that you see which is complicated.
Right.
Only during Oscar season, the producers want to, they say one for us, where we can hold the statute, and
Right.
mostly for everybody else.
Right.
So there's hardly anything Marvel, DC, Fast and the Furious, Mission Impossible of the world, because about 80%, 70% of the revenues are coming from international box office. So they want the movies to be very well understood everywhere.
Right.
And very simple. Only, as I said, few Darkest Hour, Phantom Thread, all these movies, very small budget, they make only so that they can win the, Oscar.
Sure. Yeah, well, fascinating. Yeah, very interesting. Just to stay with part of that, you're expanding your IMAX venues.
Yeah.
But there are very, very few Indian movies, 4 or 5 or 6 only. But that's an expansion and growth area for you. So are you expanding because there's a changing taste in terms of individuals wanting to see perhaps, non-Indian, or do you think there'll just be a scaling up of Indian movies made for IMAX?
You see, we compete against so many platforms. People can watch, they're stuck to their mobile devices. They can watch the movie anywhere they want to. So therefore, we need to make their experience on the big screen very, very different. So people say, you know what, this I can't get at home. So IMAX is that one technology which the screen size is 15 meters, the sound, the projection quality is just phenomenal. So therefore, we thought we must expand IMAX because it makes a big movie even bigger.
Sure.
And of course, currently the content is only Hollywood, mostly Hollywood. Again, Padmavat, by the way, was IMAX. And you have Thugs, you have lots of movies coming, about 6 films are coming. But the idea is that give a experience that people can't have at home. So therefore, we are rolling, but I only do it in demographics where Hollywood films will do well. So I can't put IMAX in smaller towns or where affluence is not that much, or English-speaking movies people don't like. Sure. So I'll put it in a Delhi, South Delhi, or a Bombay, South Bombay. So I'm very careful about where I put IMAX because the ticket prices are higher and it plays maximum Hollywood movies.
Right. Yeah, okay, thank you. So Neeraj, you're expanding your operations globally. And my question is, kind of sort of staying with culture, are you finding that there's different cultural styles that suit different contexts better? And how do you deal with that? So in India, you might have a certain approach to doing things, but when you're entering different parts of Europe, for instance, or perhaps even the US, you might adopt. How do you deal with that wide diversity of styles that your business might require?
So I think the biggest challenge for me is the integration of cultures. That's the main challenge, and for young students over here, I think they will also know that cultures are very different from, and no one is saying that one culture is better than the other, but there is an Apollo culture that we are trying to transform in the company. When you look at India itself, when he's talking about cinemas, India itself is a huge continent. Okay, and we came from Kerala, and there's my friend from Kerala over here. It's a very different culture to deal with, not only Kerala, but then you start moving up, and after every 50 kilometers, it's a different culture. So first was the challenge of integrating India itself. Today, and Anil will know that when you're going to plants in India, within our own plants, you can only speak English. You can't speak the national language, which is Hindi. People won't understand it. So that's one part of it. Then we came into Europe, and Europe in itself is a big challenge. And you would appreciate that because when we took over this Dutch company, the company had various cultures in the European continent. The Dutch can't see eye to eye with the Germans. They both think that they are the best engineers possible. Then comes the Italians and the Spanish and the French, and how do you integrate that entire system? And on top of it, we went and put the Hungarians. So now we have a bigger challenge on seeing how we can integrate the so-called Apollo culture into the system, because that, I think, is the most critical part of running a successful business. if you want growth and if you want good profitable growth, then the people have to start thinking in the same direction. It cannot be that the Indians are thinking this way and the Germans are thinking the other way. So I think that is the biggest challenge, and it's an ongoing battle. There is no solution to it. We try and inculcate in the people, in the employees, what we call the Apollo 1 family way, where we get in more family values. Coming out of India, that's, I think, very critical. When I came here and I saw the Europeans, it was a very cold system, which was come to work at 9, leave by 5 and finish. You don't even know the neighbor sitting next to you, a colleague, what about his family, about nothing. And so we are trying to inculcate that in the system, which I'm finding very interesting. And I think that remains a big challenge for any global organization.
Right. And you would agree with that?
Absolutely. I think, what Neeraj is going through, I've experienced that. We also acquired a company in Europe, and it was, pan-Europe. It was in many countries, many parts of Latin America as well. And the only thing, and he has, just hit the nail on the head, that the only way you can integrate all that is put a superimposing culture, and make them sort of forget the country culture and, only remember the company culture. And if you have a company culture, when you integrate an acquired company, I mean, the biggest challenge for any leader is to how to integrate cultures. We talk a lot about integration after you acquire companies, and I always say that the easiest stuff to do is integration of the processes, the finance, the technology, the IT. Those are all the easy stuff. Integrating cultures is the most difficult thing because it takes many years, and the leader has to remain, constantly at it, and he needs to be focused. He needs to ensure that, it's not a country culture, Indian culture. So if an Indian company acquires a European company, it's not necessary that the Indian culture is better than the European culture or European culture is better than the Indian culture. What is important is that what cultural values you want to retain in the organization, and I think it's very important for students here. And that is the key. If you know that your company culture is the culture that you would like to be imbibed into the organization, then you have to work at it relentlessly. And that's the leader's job. And I think Neeraj has put it very, very aptly that, when you have people from different countries and you're fighting who's better or that, the only thing which they can survive through is the overarching company culture.
Okay, all right, that's very useful. So cultural integration is clearly very, very difficult. It's a challenge. And if I can sort of maybe sidetrack a little bit and ask you about integrating women to a greater extent within the workforce, is that an equal challenge? And what sort of steps are you doing in that direction?
So for me, I think one of the biggest challenges in our industry has been integrating women, because we come from industry where the sales happen at the dealer shops, and which are not in the best places, where women actually don't like to go and sell products, in those kind of places. And when we hire from the universities, and when we talk about the kind of jobs that they'll have to do, to go to these places, to go to a Bhagirath Palace of the electrical market, or the Lahore Chawl, or the Ezra Street of Calcutta, women don't want to do that. And women directly want to come to the marketing role rather than the sales role. Sure. And that's something which, it's very difficult for us to get that integrated into the system. We are trying to encourage a lot. So there are a lot of women engineers that we are hiring in plants, so that they can come up in the organization through the manufacturing way, also directly into the marketing through the marketing way. But I think the biggest challenge with us has been to get them into the sales roles, right, wherein they get the real, I would say, ground experience. So something which I've been trying to do, I've been constantly evaluating that in my organization how we can constantly increase the percentage of women. And I see that's happening more from the manufacturing side and the marketing side, not from the sales side.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Neeraj, would you?
So
like
ours
to
is a very different ball game altogether. If you look at India versus Europe, so let me just touch upon India. Our consumer base is a very crude consumer base. You take a trucker in India, I don't think a lady would like to deal with a trucker in India. Our product is also very male-oriented. You said different shapes, but it is just one round donut and black. So companies have tried to make it very sexy, as in a Pirelli calendar that you guys would know about, but it still remains a very male-dominant industry. Even Europe, same thing. So on the sales side, there is, I don't think there's any lady in our organization, but where people are coming out, what Anil was saying, is in corporate functions. HR is something which is very dear to me, and that's where I see a lot of women power coming in. If you see in India, the top CEOs today of banks are ladies. So I don't think per se that we have a challenge of integrating ladies into the system, because I love to work with ladies, and I think they're much more innovative and creative, give you motivation also at work, rather than to keep seeing that old male guy coming in at work and get demotivated on a lighter side. But yeah, they do add color to the organization, and I like color. And that's what we are trying to do. On the manufacturing side, again, it's a very male-dominant industry, but with automation coming in, and that's what I'm seeing in Hungary. With automation coming in, we do have a lot of lady workmen in our factory in Budapest. And that is a good sign, because those are the engineers who are working with automation and robotics. And I can tell you one thing, the top employees in Hungary are ladies who are working on the shop floor. So there is a big change coming there.
And Ajay, is it the other way around?
No, basically at the corporate level, in fact, I was just thinking while they were talking that corporate housekeeping, HR, mostly even our legal head, they're all very, very highly qualified ladies. At the cinema level, because we run from 9 in the morning to 12 in the night, I've made a conscious decision that the first shift, which is till about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, we have more girls. Also, I find it that entire shift from being a cinema operator to a hospitality-driven company, it's much easier if girls are there. They just generally, the way they're brought up in India, they are very hospitable. So at the box office, it's easier. In fact, there's no pilferage at all if girls are there. And we've seen that. At the concession, again, cash transactions happen. Again, there's hardly any privilege. And people also calm down, even the customers, when they find women at both the box office as well as the concession stand. So I would say our percentage is very high. It must be at least 50, 60%, and very happy with that, very happy. Discipline, as I said, no theft, no pilferage, very easy for them to become hospitable anyway. So it's just wonderful to have that work.
Thank you. Yeah. What about in terms of patrons? Do women go and see movies more than men?
Yeah, plenty, especially when the IPL cricket matches are going on. Yeah, and, I mean, some movies are specifically, now lots of films are coming which are very women-oriented, but otherwise, generally, women, in fact, they're very, very important in the decision-making of which movie to see in a family are, wives, daughters, and sisters.
Oh, interesting. Good. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Now, I know that all three of you, at a corporate level, allocate quite a lot of resources towards sort of corporate social responsibility. Now, I wonder whether each of you can talk a little bit about how in your own individual sort of setting, you basically sort of give to the community and you enhance sort of the environment aside from just having business objectives.
So at in our family, we run corporate social responsibility for many years now. It's not since the government mandated a few years back. So, both on the family side as well as on the business side. So on the business side, we are very focused on hunger and education. So we've combined both these aspects with making sure that the children go to schools to get good meals. So we provide 60,000 meals every day in Rajasthan to small village schools, government schools, about 700 schools, and we make girls' toilets there, and so basically ensuring that the students go to school because one-time food they can get, then they get education. With their stomachs filled, we've seen that the retention power has increased in those schools, and girls' population in the schools have increased tremendously after putting the girls' toilets there. So in the last 15 years or so, we started with 1,000 children. Now we go up to 60,000 children. So that's on this corporate side. We do a lot of afforestation programs, heritage preservation with Aga Khan Trust and all that. But on the personal family side, that we've created a couple of hospitals which are very large corporate hospitals, but they run not for profit. And we've started a concept in India where in India there's a deficit of trust amongst the community for doctors, because people feel that doctors just run tests and surgeries which are not required. So we made these hospitals which are large corporate hospitals where the doctors are on fixed salary. They are not on sharing basis. What's the new system in hospitals these days? So and we run losses in that hospital, but we want to run it like that. It's the Mayo Clinic model that we've taken from the US. And that's a family-financed program. So we run on both sides.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so CSR is, like Anil said, is very important and has been there for some time in the company. The major CSR activity that we do is AIDS awareness in India. Directly related to our customers, because 60% of our truck customers are either carrying AIDS or are prone to that. So India today, while South Africa as a percent is number one in AIDS, India by numbers is obviously number one. And this can affect the entire country. It can also affect our own business. So what we've done is by now we've created 26 clinics, AIDS clinics, where are in the trucking centers of India, where the truckers come together. We must understand that their livelihood is on the road. 24/7, they're on the road, they're uneducated. So what we're trying to do out of those health centers is educate them about AIDS, make them captains of making the whole community aware of AIDS, and then also giving other medical services through these 26 such agencies. And while we were doing that, we also realized that none of the drivers in India are tested for eyesight. So we tied up with a company where we are testing drivers for their eyesights and then giving out glasses, because that causes accidents also.
Right.
And so the company is doing a lot in this area, and I think we'll continue to keep on doing that. So when we went to South Africa also, we had a company in South Africa. We tried to launch it there, the AIDS awareness campaigns, yeah.
Okay, good. Jay?
Yeah, actually, our program is called PVR Nest, and it started very organically. I mean, I used to run a single-screen cinema called Priya in 1990, and every time I used to go, I used to find a lot of these kids outside, street kids who were not doing anything, and there was also a drugs problem. And so we just decided that why don't we, wherever we'll have a unit, like a cinema, we'll do something around it and take care of the kids if there are any slums or anything like that. Just take care of them, their education, everything. Sure. So that's organically now grown to over 132 properties all over the country. And it's literally, as they say, charity begins at home. It's actually the people around our cinemas. There's a conscious effort made by the cinema general manager and our head of CSR, which is PVR Nest, where she has to go there and figure out what's going on in the environment. And then we just provide education to them. In Gurgaon, we've opened our own small school But generally, we just, because India is a large country, we just tie up with schools and take permission from the families, of course, if we can take care of the kids.
Right.
So that's the program which has
Very good.
become pretty sizable.
Good, good. Okay, what I'd like to do now is maybe open to the audience for questions. So there will be a roving mic, and if you can just say who you are and then keep the question brief, although the answers may be sort of longer. So perhaps the gentleman in the white shirt here.
Thank you for the presentation. So my question involves change and innovation. What strategies are your organizations doing in terms of change and innovation with regards to upgrading legacy infrastructure, by which I include both tangible and intangible capital?
You're talking about change and innovation?
Innovation, like the upgrading of legacy infrastructure, so like changing ideas, changing the way you do things.
I think the main thing is that innovation happens in the minds, and if the organization is open to ideas from especially the younger generation, because these days I wouldn't like to say my age, but we are in the mid-40s and we are too old for the innovations. So you need to create an environment in the organization where you need to start listening from the generation between the age of 20 and 30. And those are the people who really are thinking of ideas. And most of the legacy organizations that you talk about are not really, equipped to listen to these people, because we've been grown up in an environment where we used to give ideas and people used to say, "Abhi tum bache ho," you gain some experience, and then you come back and you've not worked hard like me. I've worked 20 years to get to this position. So we've been brought up in that kind of environment. Now when we are at that age, we first need to, in the senior levels, and I'm not talking about the owners, I'm talking about the senior management, needs to be very open to the ideas which are coming up from the plants, the workers, the young engineers, these young marketing people. And if the organization can create a environment where they listen to such people, I think you'll create a very innovative organization.
Okay, do you want to comment, or you would rather? No?
agree
Okay.
with
Okay, good, yeah. Let me pick that. I think you had your hand up here. Well, I'll come back to you after.
Hi, so I have two questions. One regarding women in companies in India. A lot of women are finding that they're able to be more mobile and move up in organizations when they receive guidance and mentorship from senior officials. And there's a huge move, at least in the US, to give women mentors, even male mentors, so that they can be more mobile and take up higher positions in companies. And companies that often have more women in senior positions and in C-suite positions, find that their revenues and outputs are often higher. So I was wondering if corporations and companies in India are adopting similar strategies. And then my next question is regarding e-commerce. E-commerce is growing in emerging markets. India and China are the two biggest markets for e-commerce, and that has been with the increase of 4G networks and internet inclusivity. So I was wondering what companies in India are doing to take advantage of growing internet usage, and what they're doing to promote internet usage in India.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you?
As far as women are concerned, I can say one thing, that, like I said earlier, that Indian corporates are looking at women, are inculcating that culture in the organization. I don't want to discriminate male or women. To me, an employee is an employee. Okay, if they are able to give the best output, may it be a lady, may it be a male, I have no issues with that. And I don't think it would be justified for corporates just to have a women's organization running or incentivizing that culture, because the whole organization, like I said, is made out of multi-cultures, is made out of both male and the female. So I would not like to discriminate either gender. And for me, to see the challenge remains is the cultural integration. And what the lady is bringing onto the table and what the man is bringing onto the table is not that important. I think the main issue remains is the multicultural issue that we all are facing today. And Indians more so, because we were a very closed economy. We always thought that whatever we are doing is perfect. And now with globalization happening and all of us are moving across borders, I think it becomes very difficult for us Indians to integrate ourselves into the outside world. One, we are really bad listeners, and that's one thing that I've learned from the European cultures, that listening is one of our major weaknesses. And when the other guy is educating you something, I say, I know everything. So those are the major issues that I find. On e-commerce, I can tell you for our industry, and I think Ajay would be a better bet on that. We've tried e-commerce of Tyres, but because Tyres is a very heavy, specialized technology product, it becomes very difficult for consumers to buy on the net. We've only seen in Germany, e-commerce today is only 6 to 7% of the market in tire industry. Because it is a specialized product, you can't just buy it and go and put it on your car. You have to do wheel alignment, you have to do rotation, you have to do a lot of things. So in our industry, e-commerce is still a long way to go.
I'll just add on to the e-commerce thing, because I'm sure, Ajay just said that 70% of sales are online. But in manufacturing industry, as I was talking earlier, that you need to understand the consumer, and the consumer is changing, and you need to be available to the consumer at whatever medium that he wants to, or he or she wants to get to, whether it's a small electrical shop in a small place, or a large modern format like Reliance Digital or something, or e-commerce. You need to be available, and more the consumer would need to get that kind of a flexibility to go on to any place, any medium, and get the product from. So we have products ranging from 6-7% of our sales on e-commerce to about 50%. Like small domestic appliances now, almost 40 to 50% is happening on either modern format or e-commerce. So the organizations and for business students here, it's very important that you just follow the trend and be available to the consumer. Listen to the consumer, and I think your organization will continue to make strategies around that.
Okay, thank you. You want to add to that?
Yeah, well, in our industry, as I said, it's rapidly, people are just buying tickets online. It's very good for us as well, because a lot of real estate is dedicated to physical box offices at cinema. So that real estate is not needed anymore. I'm finding more and more that only one person is needed. So it's we're giving the real estate back to the developer, or converting that into more like a concierge or a guest services. So people, it's just rapidly moving. I don't think the cinema of the future, I don't think it will have any box office left now. They will all buy online and come in. And we've got aggregators like bookmyshow.com in India. Internationally, you've got Fandango, so many aggregators, Paytm we've tied up with, and everything is going through online sales now.
Okay, thank you. We had one hand up over here, the lady here, right here.
First off, I really appreciate all the CSR work you do. But as you said, charity begins at home. So how do you as large organizations sort of measure your own social and environmental impact and costs? And do you account for this in any way? And if so, how? Thank you.
For us, it's a big thing. Sustainability is a very, very important aspect for us. As an organization, we make sure that whatever resources we are using from the environment or the society, we try to give as much back as possible. So just so that you know that Havells today is a water positive company. Whatever water we consume from the environment, we give more than that back to the environment. So we're positive. Right now we are working towards making ourselves a wood and paper positive company as well. So we consume a lot of wood and paper for our packaging, and we estimated that to give that back, we'll have to put in about 400,000 trees every year. So we've taken a plan to put in 2 million plants trees in the coming 5 years. So I think the industries are realizing that sustainability is no more, a so-called a good thing to do. It actually impacts your business in a very positive way. It improves your productivity, it improves your profitability as well. So we've been, off and on we've been working on sustainability for some time, but I think last few years there's a huge focus towards that.
Great, thank you. Would you like to add or no?
Just another example other than what Anil has said about factories doing this. I think we all in our way are doing it. But as you know, the automotive industry is seeing a huge change with electric vehicles coming in. Tesla's driving it. And what Tyres does give CO2 emissions. There's a parameter that we call rolling resistance, which is the stoppage of the tire. And the lower you go on that, that's the lesser CO2 emissions that come out. So today companies like ourselves are doing a lot of R&D in seeing how we can come to these low rolling resistance, thereby CO2 emission norms are looked after. So there's a lot happening in the automotive industry as far as environment is concerned, and you've seen India is rapidly going to this change of EVs, electric vehicles, that they've come out with a policy for 2030, and you will see a huge change in that.
Okay, thank you. How about the gentleman right in the middle with a blue tie?
My question is to Mr.
That's okay.
My question is to Mr. Anil. Sir, as you said in your initial remarks, that India today again is the fastest growing economy of the world, which is good. But sir, on the other hand, today the joblessness in India is also as it at its peak. So sir, do you think either of these things can or should go hand in hand?
So the only way job creation can happen is with economic growth. And I think, I'm an eternal optimist that the next decade or two belongs to India. So things are being put in the right place. It takes time. Nothing happens in a day. Rome was not built in a day. So it takes its own time. And, in the last 3 years, or at least you see the right steps being taken. And I know you're smiling. Every reform is a painful reform in the initial stages, but it is things are happening for the future. Businesses went through a lot of pain last year. I'm telling you, it's not so easy, but we were very clear that these reforms are happening for the future. So I think India's growth prospects are extremely good, and with growth prospects, job creation will definitely happen. And it's not just a political statement to be made that we are creating jobs and this and that. Unless and until growth happens, we'll not be able to create jobs. And with adoption of technology, people talk about automation, people talk about artificial intelligence coming in. Will that create more joblessness? I doubt. It will in fact be a positive job creation, because a lot more minds will be needed possibly for the global world, not just for India. So I think, future is good, not only in terms of growth, but also in terms of job creation.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. We are very close to the end, but I wanted to ask one last question of the three of you. You're all outstanding business people and in a sense role models for many individuals here and elsewhere. I wonder if you can maybe take 30 seconds each to just identify the one key characteristic that you think makes you so successful. Starting with...
I show scripts which are already been done.
I think, and probably it's a lesson which I have learned, and I would like all the students, who are listening, should also get this, that, leading businesses, requires a lot of selflessness, and it's not just about money making. And, the more you are worried about people around you, whether it's your employees, whether it's people in the organization, the environment, the society, and the world at large. So you are doing business for the world at large, not just for yourself. And the excitement that gets created on a daily basis to go out and do that kind of work is just immense. And a lot of people ask me what drives me at this point of time. It's money or fame or anything of that sort. No, it's just that excitement to do something for the world that keeps us going all the time. So that has helped me a lot to lead businesses.
Okay, thank you. I think you're next, Neeraj.
I think for us, it's really the passion to come to work and the commitment.
Yeah.
If you're passionate about something, you will excel in it. And I think that's the main culture that one needs to drive. My main thing has been I work hard and I even play harder. And I enjoy work.
Okay, thank you.
Simple.
Thank you.
I think passion, I was fortunate that, so earlier my family business was a trucking business. So before he got into
really?
business, I got out.
Whilst he was watching movies,
Yeah.
you were in the truck.
So I think I was fortunate that I found this business, which again, thanks to my dad, which I was passionate about, and that's what drives us every single day. And the other thing is that I have a placard in my office, which I really like, and I thought I'd share with the students, is that just be modest. A lot was accomplished before you were born, is what it says. So I think you have to work hard, you have to be successful, you have to say no to mediocrity, but at the same time, you need to keep your feet on the ground, which is very important. The moment you get carried away and get into your head, that's disaster.
Okay, thank you. Very, very wise words. So do join me in thanking Ajay, Neeraj, and Anil.